Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Russian President Vladimir Putin has told Russians that peace with Ukraine will only take place, in his words, when we achieve our objectives. He's holding his first major news conference since he launched his first full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Mr. Putin has combined his annual direct line phone-in with Russians with an audience of journalists. The annual event did not take place last year. Much of the first part of this marathon event has been focused on what Mr. Putin calls the special military operation in Ukraine. Israel's ambassador to the UK has rejected a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians, adding the Palestinians never wanted to have a state next to Israel. Seen here a few weeks ago with David Cameron, Tzipy Otovli also ruled out a ceasefire in Gaza. It just basically means we would like to welcome another attack, like the 7th of October, she said. Meanwhile, aerial and ground attacks continue in Gaza. Here, a Gazan journalist saying this once residential area in Jabalia had been targeted by Israeli warplanes. The ongoing conflict has worsened the long-standing water shortage gripping the enclave, forcing residents to take seawater for daily use despite the health risks.
We're seeing infectious diseases breaking out, and that I think WHO is estimating about 360,000. Meningitis, jaundice, chickenpox, upper respiratory tract infections, they've all been recorded. And of course, we have already referred to the outbreak of diarrhea, in particular amongst children, which globally is the number one causes of death amongst children under the age of 5 in situations like this.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has joined fellow EU leaders for a high-stakes summit, making clear as he arrived that he would oppose them by blocking accession talks with Ukraine. He has strongly resisted Kyiv's bid to join the EU and its pleas for aid, telling the Hungarian parliament, "We are the voice of common sense in Europe." War, corruption, a big agricultural sector and mistreatment of its Hungarian minority disqualify Kyiv from joining the EU anytime soon, he said. Meanwhile, Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar said that without ongoing support for Ukraine, Putin will win.
A financial decision and also a decision on whether to begin negotiations, and we have to say yes to at least one of those two, and ideally both of those two, because Ukraine is in peril. Ukraine will not stand without support and ongoing support from both the European Union and the US, the two towers of freedom and democracy in the world. And if Ukraine doesn't have support from the EU and the US, well, then Putin will win.
The embattled Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has replaced 4 cabinet ministers, trying to limit the fallout from the biggest financial scandal his ruling party has faced in decades. Kishida appointed former Foreign Minister Yoshimasa Hayashi as Chief Cabinet Secretary and the former Justice Minister Ken Sato as Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry. He appointed Takede Matsumoto as Internal Affairs Minister and Tetsuchi Sakamoto as the Agriculture Minister. The new ministers received their appointment documents from Kishida and bowed before the Emperor Naruhito. A plan for Italy to send tens of thousands of asylum seekers to Albania for processing has been temporarily blocked by the Albanian Supreme Court. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and her Albanian counterpart Edi Rama signed the agreement last month. Under the deal, some 3,000 people a month who had attempted to reach Italy by sea would be detained in 2 processing centres near the northeastern port in Albania, while their asylum claims were examined. The top court ordered a hearing next month to decide whether the deal violates Albania's constitution. And hundreds of kayaks decked with Christmas lights have lit up the winter darkness as they moved along the canals in central Copenhagen to celebrate St. Lucia, the traditional bearer of lights. Thousands of bystanders watched from streets and bridges around the city, and organisers said around 500 kayaks moved along the canal for a parade to bring light into the darkness. The procession of light at one of the darkest times of the year in Scandinavia originated in Sweden at the end of the 19th century and was later adapted by their neighbours in Denmark. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel studios in Lagos.